Have you ever wondered what it costs to make ends meet in your state, or any state for that matter? Well, you don't have to wonder anymore, because I'm going to tell you right now. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to World According to Briggs. Today, I thought we could look at how much the living wage is in each state. The fine people at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology decided they would figure out the living wage of each state. The livable wage is also known as the living wage, is defined as the amount of income determined to provide a decent standard of living. In public policy, advocates define the living wage as a minimum income necessary for a worker to meet their basic needs. Basic needs include housing, food, health care, and other essentials. A giant television or a trip to the Bahamas is not an essential. Keep that in mind. The purpose of the living wage is to make sure that all full-time workers are compensated enough to live out of poverty. Every state has a different cost of living, so every state requires a different amount for a worker to live comfortably. All right, let's see where your state ended up. Number 50. Kentucky. Ah yes, the bluegrass state is the cheapest state in the nation to live. Yeah, who saw that one coming? Most people would think it's Mississippi. No, it's actually Kentucky. The fact that their biggest employer is Walmart plays into that a little bit, I'm sure, because Walmart's not really known for paying people a whole bunch of money. The living wage in Kentucky is $43,308. That's what you need a year to get by in Kentucky. 49. Arkansas. The natural state is naturally really inexpensive to live. I mean, other than, like we've said many times, the Rogers, Fayetteville area up there, Springdale, every place else in the state is pretty close to poverty, if not well below it. The largest employer in the state of Arkansas, again, Walmart. Starting to see a pattern here. You'll need $44,571 to live comfortably in Arkansas. 48. West Virginia. Who saw this one coming? We knew it would be towards the bottom, but I really thought it would be number 1 or 2. I thought it would be Mississippi and then West Virginia, but no, it was beat by Kentucky and Arkansas. Buckle up for this one. The largest employer in West Virginia is Walmart. Imagine that. You only need $44,823 a year to live comfortably in West Virginia. And some of the parts I've seen in West Virginia, you could live very comfortably on that amount of money. Number 47, South Dakota. South Dakota is slowly becoming a popular state. It kind of has been, but not many people pulled the trigger and actually moved there. They've got a very low cost of living, and they've got a lot of wide open space. The largest employer in South Dakota is Avera Healthcare. You only need $45,410 a year to live comfortably, the living wage in South Dakota. Now, I always say living wage and live comfortably because I think they're kind of the same, and I go back and forth. So forgive me if you don't agree with me, but I think if you're living comfortably, that means you have a livable wage. You're not worried about your electricity being shut off, and you're never worried really too much about where your next meal's coming from. You got food, you got electricity, and you got a roof over your head. Living comfortably. 46. Idaho. This one kind of shocked me at first. I mean, look how low Idaho is on the food chain here. It's really cheap to live there, and it's a very popular state. Normally, when you're a popular state, you're expensive, but not Idaho. They got their own thing going on. You only need $45,801 to live comfortably in Idaho. Idaho's largest employer is St. Luke's Health System. 45, Alabama. The Yellowhammer State, I think, should be more expensive. I mean, they've got Huntsville, which is known as Rocket City, USA, because they have such a strong tech community that's associated with NASA. And it's still a good tech thing. There's a lot of people making a lot of money in Huntsville on the tech side of things. So I thought for sure the entire state would be getting some of that residual and they'd be more expensive. They're really not. It's not that bad to live there, even though their largest employer is Walmart. The living wage for Alabama is $45,824 a year. 44, Ohio. Ohio, like so many other Rust Belt states, never fully recovered after the collapse of the manufacturing in the United States back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I mean, they lost a lot of jobs over those decades. They've never, ever really recovered. I mean, cities like Cleveland are just starting to come out of that type thing, and they're kind of having a rebirth after so many years of just being a beat-up place to live. The largest employer in Ohio is Walmart. You only need $45,853 to live comfortably and get by in Ohio. Number 43, Mississippi. Our old pal Mississippi. We knew they'd be towards the bottom. I'm surprised they made it this far up. Mississippi has a lot of problems, and being expensive isn't one of them. It's really hard to find a place that is expensive in Mississippi, really. The number one employer is, you guessed it, Walmart. You only need $46,084 to live comfortably in Mississippi every single year. 42, Missouri. Hey, guess what? It's another Walmart state. Imagine that. Walmart is big throughout this part of the country. Actually, there's more states in this country right now that Walmart employs the most people than states that don't, really. It's kind of sad. I mean, it's good to have a job, but it'd be better if they paid a little bit more. It only takes $46,159 to make ends meet in Missouri every single year. Number 41, South Carolina. South Carolina is mostly rural. It's got a few expensive places like Charleston, Myrtle Beach, a few other places, but for the most part, it's small towns and very rural, so those tend to be relatively inexpensive, and that helps bring down their overall cost. It'll only run you $46,568 a year to live comfortably in South Carolina, and their number one employer is Walmart. 40. Oklahoma. Oklahoma is dead center in the middle of the country, right above Texas, and it really doesn't cost much to live there. Like a lot of other states in this part of the country, they got a lot of open space. When you got a lot of open space, things tend to not be expensive like housing and things like that. The number one employer in Oklahoma is Microsoft. Who saw that one coming? I'm totally kidding. I think 9 people in the whole state own computers. It's actually Walmart. Living wage in Oklahoma is $46,613. It's all you need every single year. 39, Tennessee. The volunteer state comes in at number 39. It's pretty cheap to live here, and this kind of surprises me because you've got a couple popular cities here like Chattanooga and Nashville. A lot of people have been flooding there over the last decade, and they still remain relatively cheap. I mean, most of the people save a fortune on not going to the dentist in this state. Tennessee's number one employer is Walmart. 38, North Dakota. This is another one I found strange. It beats South Dakota. It's actually more expensive to live in North Dakota than South Dakota, and South Dakota to most people is a much more appealing state. I'm sure how prices shot up when the gas and oil boom happened there. That probably screwed up the state's numbers pretty good, but realistically, South Dakota's a more appealing state, so therefore it should be more expensive. That's in theory. But the number one employer in North Dakota is Sanford Healthcare, or Sanford Health, whatever you want to call it. And the living wage in North Dakota is $46,814, and that's what you need to live comfortably every year. Number 37, Indiana. Indiana has a couple cities that really bring it down in a lot of different ways, and cost is one of them. But in general, the state's very rural, so it's relatively inexpensive. So that helps with this number. The number one employer in Indiana is Walmart, and the living wage is $46,838 a year. 36, Montana. Up there near North Dakota and the Canadian border, you have Montana, and a lot of open land and not that many people. The number one employer for this state is Walmart. I think that might change though in the next handful of years because a lot of big tech companies are looking at the Billings area and even Bozeman a little bit. But Billings is really starting to get the attention of some tech companies, so that might all change in the next couple of years. But right now, Walmart is their biggest employer, and the living wage for Montana is only $47,083. Not bad. Number 35, Utah. Now we're starting to get in the area where it's that sweet spot. They're decent states normally, and they're still relatively inexpensive to live there. Montana was one of them, Indiana too probably, but now we're getting into the better states. The number one employer in Utah is Intermountain Healthcare, and the living wage for the Beehive State is $47,922. 34, Georgia. Georgia is still not a terribly expensive place to live, even though it's become more and more popular. I mean, places like Savannah and Atlanta, they've all been growing, but you also got places like Albany, Georgia that just bring the whole place down. It's relatively inexpensive to live there, and they have some decent jobs, especially around the Atlanta area with the film industry that's moved there over the last decade or so. Their number one employer is still Walmart here, so keep that in mind. But for a state like Georgia that's become very popular, it's very inexpensive. The livable wage you need in Georgia is $47,946 a year. 33, Wyoming. I really thought Wyoming was going to be cheaper than this. They don't have a lot of people there. It is kind of popular, but they don't have big cities that are bringing them down in the cost of living or anything like that. But, they're not the worst. I just think they're more expensive than they should have been. The livable wage in Wyoming is $47,951, and the largest employer is Walmart. 32, Louisiana. The Pelican State doesn't have a lot going for it. I mean, it's a beautiful state, and it's got some natural beauty to it, but they got some really rundown cities and some really nasty parts. If it wasn't for New Orleans and the New Orleans Saints Probably no one would ever show up here that doesn't already live there. If you move there, you can get a job at Walmart, that is their #1 employer, and it's relatively inexpensive. It's a little more expensive than I think it should be because Louisiana is not that appealing. But the living wage for Louisiana is $47,975. 31. New Mexico. This is another jaw dropper. How are they not one of the absolute cheapest places to live? They don't have jobs, they have high crime, it's the middle of the frickin' desert. After you get past Santa Fe and Albuquerque, parts of Albuquerque I should say, most of the state sucks. I mean, great sunsets, and if you're a desert person, which I am not, New Mexico might be fine. The #1 employer for New Mexico is the University of New Mexico, and the living wage for New Mexico is $48,050. Number 30, Kansas. Not a lot of people go to Kansas. Not a lot of people even think about Kansas unless you're already in Kansas or one of the neighboring states. It's just not a place on many people's radar. Even though they have one of the best suburbs in the whole country, which is Overland Park. Overland Park has great everything, and it's not terribly expensive. It's a good place, but that's one of the few places in Kansas that is really appealing for most people to move to. But it is cheap. The living wage in Kansas is $48,054. Their #1 employer is the Mart of Walls, Walmart. Number 29, Nebraska. It is almost like these two states are the same state, Kansas and Nebraska. Whenever I do a video that's listing all the states, they're always right next to each other, just like they are on the map. Nebraska's just north of Kansas, and it's just like Kansas. If you're from that area, I'm sure there's a few things that are different, that are glaringly obvious to you, but not to most of the country. The livable wage in Nebraska is $48,076, just about the same. $25 difference. Here's where it gets different though. Their #1 employer is the University of Nebraska. Number 28, Texas. Yes, this is the biggest upset of this whole thing. Texas is one of the most moved to states right now in the country. Everyone's heading there. From Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, to my high school girlfriend now lives in Texas. It's a very popular state, and it's still relatively inexpensive. I mean, look, they're middle of the road right here in this whole list, so that's pretty good for a place that's desirable to move to. To live comfortably in Texas, you need $48,160. That's it. Their #1 employer, Walmart. I thought it would be some oil company, but no, Walmart. Number 27, Michigan. Once you take Detroit and Flint out of the equation, this is a really nice state, statistically speaking. I mean, sure, it gets cold. It's still a relatively inexpensive place to live. The living wage in Michigan is $48,837, and the #1 employer, the University of Michigan. 26, Iowa. Iowa is the poster child for flyover states. They always have been. Even Lewis and Clark took a hard pass on the Hawkeye State and went to the left. The good news is these days, it's very inexpensive. The main employer here is the University of Iowa, and to live comfortably, the living wage here, you need to make $48,882 a year to live here comfortably to meet the living wage thing. 25, North Carolina. North Carolina's got a lot going for it, and it's still, middle of the road. I mean, Charlotte's blowing up. Raleigh-Durham's gotten really popular in the last decade or so. Asheville is an outstanding place to live right now. Yeah, they got a lot going for it, and it's still, like I said, relatively inexpensive. The living wage in North Carolina is $49,575, and their #1 employer is the University of North Carolina. The whole system, not just one school. 24, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a great state, and people aren't really moving there as much as they used to. They've got a lot of good places to get land and live. Remote workers might do just fine here, and they're still relatively inexpensive. Again, middle of the road. The largest employer in Pennsylvania is the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Now, keep in mind, I'm just telling you the one that employs the most. There's a lot of industries out there that, altogether employ a lot more people. I'm just giving you this so you know. The living wage in Pennsylvania is $49,914 a year. 23, Wisconsin. Yeah, who doesn't love Wisconsin? I mean, it's a great state for families, especially if you can get past the cold. It's a nice place to live, and like we're learning right now, it's not terribly expensive. The #1 employer here is the University of Wisconsin, and you need $51,120 to achieve the livable wage in Wisconsin. 22, Washington. Yep, Washington. They're on the list. A little lower than I thought they'd be. I thought they'd be a little more expensive, but no, I guess they're doing pretty good. The number one employer in Washington is Boeing. Don't know how much longer that's going to be for. They've been running into some tough times. Let's hope they pull it out. They employ a lot of people in Washington. But the living wage in Washington is $51,271, and it's a great state to live in. 21, Maine. If you don't mind the cold, this is a great place to live. I've said before, you got to have a little bit of money because it gets a little expensive in Maine, especially some of the nicer areas. The number one employer in Maine is Hanford Supermarkets, and if you want to live here and achieve the livable wage, you got to come up with $51,305 a year. Number 20, Arizona. Now that we're over the 50,000 mark, we're starting to get into the little more expensive places and nice places. I've said it before, I'm not a desert person, so I don't find Arizona appealing at all. I don't like heat, and I don't like rocks and dirt. I like trees, grass, muddy ground, rain, cloudy skies. That's my favorite type of weather to be in. Arizona does nothing for me, but a lot of people like it, and a lot of people are heading there. We learned that in the last video. A lot of Californians. Number one employer in Arizona is our old friend Walmart, and if you want to achieve the living wage here, you need to come up with $51,341 a year. 19, Oregon. Ah yes, my current home state. The Beaver State. That's the only reason I moved here. I figure I gotta live in a place called the Beaver State. The number one employer in Oregon is Providence Health Services, which I know quite a few people that work for them. They got huge hospitals here. Whole compounds. It's really neat. I honestly thought it would have something to do with beer or Nike if it was Oregon being the number one employer, but no, I was wrong. The living wage in Oregon is $51,900. 18, Vermont, the land of Bernie Sanders. The number one employer in Vermont is the University of Vermont Medical Center, which is a really nice place, I understand. I have not been there, but I know someone that worked as a security guard there while he was going to college. You need $51,977 to achieve the living wage in Vermont. 17, Minnesota. Yeah, we already know they've been all over the news and not for good stuff lately, and it's a great state, and that's too bad. The number one employer in Minnesota is the Mayo Clinic, and to achieve the livable wage, you need to come up with $52,115 a year. 16, Florida. This state is filled with alligators, hot, humid weather, retirees that look like they've been sun-baked into leather, and their number one employer is Walmart. To achieve the livable wage in Florida, you need to make $52,206 a year. 15, Illinois. Illinois is a nice state. Chicago is somewhat of a nightmare in some parts. I still love Chicago, but you know all about it. A lot of people are fleeing Chicago, but not the rest of Iowa. So this means prices are going down, so they're at number 15. They'd probably be a lot earlier on this list if it wasn't for Chicago, because that place is crazy expensive. The number one employer is Walmart, and to achieve the livable wage, you need $52,304 in Illinois. Number 14, Nevada. The Silver State is one of the states where we start kind of getting up there in the price. It didn't used to be that way. Then, like so many other states, Californians showed up and it started getting more and more expensive. The number one employer in Nevada is the MGM Resorts International. And if you want to achieve the livable wage in Nevada, you need $52,698 a year. 13, Delaware. Delaware's a really nice state once you get out of Wilmington. Most of it's rural outside of, let's say, Dover and Wilmington. They have a couple other smaller cities, but most of this state is rural, and that helps bring down the price because all their cities are pretty frickin' expensive. The number one employer in Delaware is Christian Care Health Systems, and if you want to achieve the living wage in Delaware, you need $53,112 a year. Number 12, Rhode Island. It's just Rhode Island. Not a lot going on there, maybe some finance jobs and insurance jobs in Providence, but for the most part, Rhode Island's just there and it's small. The number one employer in Rhode Island is Lifespan Systems of Hospitals, and the living wage there is $53,240. Number 11, Colorado. And again, one of my favorite states. I love Oregon, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Colorado. Those are my top 4 favorites. Vermont's number 5. Colorado's been getting more and more expensive over the last couple decades, and right now it's pretty up there. You've got to go to the east side of the state to really get anything cheap. And don't get me wrong, there's some spots here or there, but Their number one employer in the entire state of Colorado is the Denver International Airport. That airport's huge, and I could see it employing a lot of people, but I didn't know it would be their number one. To achieve a living wage in Colorado, you need $53,792 a year. Number 10, Virginia. Virginia is where you go when you work in D.C., but you can't afford to stay in D.C. By the way, D.C. isn't really a state, so I didn't include it to this. It is the absolute most expensive place to live in the United States. The Arlington, Alexandria, Richmond, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, all those drive up the prices, and the rest of the state, well, there's some other pockets, but the rest of the state is pretty much rural and inexpensive, so that keeps it from getting crazy. The number one employer in Virginia is Walmart, back to Walmart again, and to achieve the living wage, you need $54,264 a year. Number 9, Alaska. Alaska is expensive. I mean, the land isn't crazy expensive, but everything else is, because if you want groceries, it's got to be shipped there, unless you're buying like salmon. The number one employer in Alaska is Providence Health Systems, just like here in Oregon, and to achieve the living wage, you need $54,400 a year. Number 8, New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a pretty good state. It's pretty expensive, though. It's not that big, and it's just like Vermont in a lot of ways. It's just a little more expensive. The number one employer in New Hampshire is Walmart, and to achieve the living wage, you need to make $55,103 a year. New Jersey. My mom always used to say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So I'm just going to tell you the numbers on this one. The number one employer in New Jersey is Wakefern Food Corporation, and to achieve the living wage, you need to make $56,109 a year. Number 6, California. The Golden State. It's more like the tarnished Golden State these days. It's not what it used to be as far as population goes. This census will be the first time they were under double-digit percentage points of population gain. Yeah, they'll be lucky if they hit 5% this time. They've had some census where they gained 65, 53%, stuff like that. 5% maybe this time. It's expensive, and that's why so many people are leaving the Golden State. The number one employer in California is the University of California system. They got a whole bunch of colleges, universities, and to achieve the living wage here in California, you need $57,315 a year. If you don't know much about California, the coastal part, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, all that area, Santa Barbara, that is incredibly expensive. Almost anywhere 10 miles in, it's painfully expensive. Once you get out to the desert and to the northern parts of California, it's a lot less expensive. So that's why this one's not number one. It's a big state, and a lot of it's not as prosperous as the coastal area. Number 5, Maryland. You never hear much about Maryland, you know? I mean, other than Baltimore, and everyone knows what a nightmare that place is, but you never hear much about the state of Maryland. All you hear about is Baltimore. The number one employer in Maryland is Johns Hopkins Institutions, and to achieve the living wage, you need $58,178. Number 4, New York. Yes, the Empire State. They're in the same boat as California. They're just losing people. They're actually doing worse as far as the inward versus outward migration. They might gain 1% this census. They probably would have lost more if 2020 wasn't a pandemic year. They actually had a lot of people moving out. Tons of people had to cancel those plans because of the pandemic. The number one employer in New York State is the State University of New York System. That sounds weird, I know, but that's how they word it. Number 3, Connecticut. Connecticut, I've never understood Connecticut. I've said many times before, and actually in the last video, Connecticut's weird. It's got some of the most rundown cities and towns, but at the same time, they have some of the nicest, most expensive neighborhoods and suburbs in the country. It's really weird. It's like black or white. There's hardly any gray, it seems like. You know what I mean? I hope you know what I mean. The number one employer in Connecticut is the Yale New Haven Health System. And if you want to achieve the living wage in Connecticut, you need $59,502. Number 2, Massachusetts. Yep, right next door to Massachusetts. They're really close to being the same state. I mean, at one point, I think they were. Actually, Connecticut was part of Maine, I believe. Anyway, they have a lot of similarities, and Massachusetts is just a little bit better. The number one employer in Massachusetts is Partners Healthcare, and to achieve the living wage in the baked bean state, you need $59,560. And before we get to number 1, don't forget we have another channel called On This Day. There is a link down below. We'd appreciate it if you checked it out and subscribe. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, The only state left, Hawaii. Yep, Hawaii is the most expensive state in the union. It just is. That's all there is to it. It's an island. It's beautiful. The beaches and everything's got to be shipped there. Much like Alaska, it's just getting stuff there is one of the hardest things to do. So that drives up the cost of frickin' everything. The number one employer in Hawaii is the Hormel Corporation, the maker of Spam. I'm just kidding. It is the University of Hawaii. And to achieve the living wage in Hawaii, you need $60,700 a year. It's expensive to live in paradise, everyone. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, and be nice to each other.